Stay tuned to find out how Adventists are showing up in North American communities. My name is Yvonne Shelton, and you're watching Urban Report. Hello and welcome to Urban Report. My guest today is Derek Lee, the Executive Director of the North American Division, Adventist Community Services. Welcome to Urban Report, Brother Derek.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. I have heard some really good things about you and the work that you're doing, and what a blessing it is. Let's talk about your journey for a second and how you got to Adventist Community Services.
Well, that's a long journey, but I'll start in the beginning. I started in public safety with the fire service. Started in a place called Prince George's County, which sits just north of Washington, D.C. I worked there for 20 years, and it's a very busy, hectic environment. I think my last year we ran just over 150,000 calls that we ran for the citizenry there in Prince George's County. And I was the Deputy Director over operations for when I finally retired back almost 10 years ago, I guess it's been.
Wow. Now, have you always had a passion for helping people?
Well, it really seemingly came natural to me. That was always where I found myself, whether it was on the playground and something would take place. I tended to end up in the helping side of things. And so going into the fire service, public safety was kind of a natural for me, I guess. So yes, I guess in answer to your question.
Yeah. So how was it being an Adventist in that arena? Were there challenges that you faced?
Well, as you might have already guessed, that's not necessarily the environment where you would expect to find Seventh-day Adventists, but I've always been who I am. And so being in the fire service, I was who I was. And I think they came to accept me for the type of person that I was. They thought I was a little strange, perhaps, but we managed, and I think it ended up going well, working out well.
That's great. Tell us about that test. There was a test that they wanted you to take. Tell us about that.
Well, what had happened, I worked in the fire service at that point for 5 years. And in order to get promoted in the department, you have to take a competitive test. And this is a test that members of the department study for years to get ready for it. And so I had been studying because I thought at some point I would see the officers, the sergeants, the lieutenants, and I said, you know, I think I'd like to do that one day. And so I had been studying to get myself ready for that. And when the date came that they were going to be administering the test, it happened to fall on the Sabbath. This created a bit of a conflict for me because though there were days when my shift would fall on Sabbath that I would work, that was direct service to people that needed help. And so I viewed that much like a doctor that may have to deliver a baby on the Sabbath. But this was a little different for me, to take a test, which I viewed as more of a personal thing, just for me.
Like professional development.
Yes, yes, and so I did not have a comfort level with that. And so I wrote a letter to my chief at the time and told him that this was creating a problem for me and I would not be able, I wanted to take the test but would not be able to take it if it was administered on that day. He ended up getting the letter and actually visited my station about a week and a half later. And I sat with him, and you keep in mind, I was a young firefighter at the time. I had never spoken with the chief, did not think the chief knew my name. So when he showed up at my station, oh my goodness, all the lights went on, and everyone said, the chief is here to see you. Whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I remember we went into one of the offices there, and he sat down and he said, what's going on here? You know, because I think his thinking was, this guy's trying to get away with something. You know, he's trying to get a leg up on everyone that's taking it, because it's a very competitive test. You know? And I explained to him that as a Seventh-day Adventist, I did not feel that I could honor the Sabbath taking the test on the Sabbath. And so I explained to him that if it was given then, I would not be able to take it, even though I wanted to promote within the department. And he didn't really give an affirmative or anything in relation to what he was going to do with this. But about a week later, I received a letter, and it explained that the test was going to be given, but it was actually going to be given on Sunday. And so with that, I was able then to take the test. Now, I will tell you, because in the department, there was always talk about when things happen, and this was, they had never changed the date of a test. That was outrageous. And so people started to ask, well, why did it get changed? And then the rumor got around, I guess people had known about the meeting. The word got around that this Derek Lee was the reason why it was being changed. And so that's how.
Look at God.
Yeah, that's right.
You stood up for him.
How about that?
And he honored that.
Well, you know, he did, but for me, the point I had gotten to at that stage was, even if the department had decided, this is when the test is, this is what you're going to have to do if you want to take it and promote. If they had decided to take that stance, I was comfortable enough with my position that I was prepared to remain a firefighter for the remainder of my career, which at that point would have been about 15 more years. I would have been fine with that. And, you know, the fact that it worked out differently, I was even more fine with that.
Yes,
but I was comfortable either way.
But the Lord knew that.
Well,
see, to me, that's, I was listening to a pastor who was talking about a similar situation, and the idea is, what are you willing to give up for God?
How about that?
And you were willing to give up professional advancement for God. And he blessed you. And what a witness that was.
Well, I'll tell you, and I mean, that's one example of something that took place during my time with the fire department. There were a number of things that happened along the way of a similar fashion where God really did show out for me and gave me an opportunity to represent him at a level that perhaps I wouldn't have otherwise been able to.
Yes. God has this way of growing us. And so
that's deep. That's deep.
He does. He grows us. And I'm just so thankful that, you know, he took you from this place to this place to this place. And now you are the executive director of Adventist Community Services for the North American Division.
You know, when you say that, even when I hear it now, it doesn't seem real necessarily from this standpoint. Historically, this has been a position that a pastor has been in. That's the way the church has run it heretofore. And to be honest with you, I thought in my head that this was the role of a pastor. So it was never my intent to work for my church, because there aren't many firemen working for the church. You know, there aren't many opportunities for that. And so at no point did I really think that this was a possibility. And so the way God worked things to get me here, it has really been nothing short of a miracle, really.
Well, give us a little synopsis of that.
Okay. So I left the fire service, and, you know, retired at 20 years, 20
okay.
years on. We retire very young. Now, my plan, to show you how human things go, my plan was to spend the rest of my life on the beach. That was my thinking. That was my thinking. And so when I retired, that's what I did. I actually went to the beach, and I remember I was at the beach. Now, the thing that I didn't completely think through is, I was at the beach all alone. Everybody else is working or in school.
Right.
And here I'm sitting at the beach. Well, that only worked for just a little bit, and I realized I needed to come up with something else that I could do. And I only had what I viewed as a limited number of skill sets. You know, this is, again, my limited thinking. And so I said, well, okay, what can you do with the skills that you have? And so I initially started consulting. And it was through that consulting work that an organization reached out to me and said that they wanted to create a disaster response team. And I said, oh, okay. And so when I got that, I looked at it like they basically wanted a fire department that responded all over the world.
Okay.
That's the way I wrote up the plan. So I wrote it up that way. It was a 3-month contract. I gave them the plan. And they looked at it and they said, wow, we kind of like this. And they said, you know, we'd like you to come on as the director of this team that you suggested could be put together.
Wow.
Now, that wasn't my plan. I was just thinking I was doing a contract. They were going to pay me the money for doing it, and they were going to take that plan and put together a team. Well, now they were asking me to do that.
You know what that reminds me of? Joseph.
Ah.
Joseph had the plan.
How about that? How about
right?
that? That's a good point. I never thought of that. I never thought of that.
And he had that plan, and he told Pharaoh what the plan was, never thinking that he was going to have to oversee the 7 years of planning.
How about that?
Right?
You know what? It's interesting you say that, because I know that story.
Yes.
But I never really equated that. That is a good point, because that's exactly what happened in this case.
Yes.
They got the plan. They looked at it. I remember the meeting. They called me into the meeting, and I thought they were just going to give me my check. That was my thought.
Right.
And at the meeting, they say, well, yeah, we do like the plan, but our question is, would you be willing to be the director of this team that you suggested could be put together? Wow. And I thought about it. I said, whoa, you know, because that wasn't really my thinking.
Yeah.
And so I asked them, hey, well, can I go talk with my family? You know, that gives you some time.
Right, right.
And so I said, would you mind if I go talk with my family? And so I went. I remember I sat down with my wife and I said, you know, this organization is asking if I would come and work with them.
Right.
And now, what I didn't share with you, the organization was a Muslim organization.
Wow.
And so I'll be honest with you, I hadn't never had any interaction with Muslims.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
And so now they were asking me to come and work for them, putting this team together.
Wow.
And I said, wow. And so I remember having the conversation with my wife, and, you know, she was kind of taken aback. You know, I've been Seventh-day Adventist all my life.
Yeah, yeah.
And here I am now talking about
yeah,
going and working there, and, you know, wow. And so we agreed that, okay, we would tell them that, yes, we were willing to do it. We weren't sure of the particulars of it, but, you know, it's something that I thought I could do.
Was this a 3-month? Did you say 3 months?
Well, the 3-month was to put together the plan.
Oh, okay.
So this was
Gotcha.
after that fact.
I got you.
And so I let them know that, yes, I was willing to do it. When I accepted, and to show you how things work, when I said yes, they said, well, since you're willing to do it, we need you to leave tomorrow. And we're going to head to Tunisia because we'd like you to take a look at, this was during the Arab Spring, if you remember. 2011, I think it was, 2011 or 12. And that had just taken off. And they were doing some work right there at the Libyan border. And they wanted me to go and view some of that work to see the level of operation that they were wanting to get involved in. And so sure enough, within 24 hours of accepting the position, I was at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C., headed to Tunisia to go to the Libyan border. And that was the beginning of what would turn out to be a 5-year relationship that we went to events all over the world, the Philippines, Nepal, just all over, doing fabulous things. And I'll be honest with you, I was able to learn with them.
Yes.
Because they threw quite a bit of financial support into this program because they were just beginning it.
Yes.
And so I was able to learn things that I don't know that I would have been able to learn anywhere else working for this Muslim group. And it was through that work that Adventist Community Services heard that this group was doing all these fabulous things, and they heard word that there was a Seventh-day Adventist that was leading it. And they said, wait a minute, what is going on here? And so they reached out to me, and I remember when they reached out to me, I was actually in Israel when they reached out to me, and I thought that they wanted some consulting work.
Right.
You know, I said, well, why is Adventist Community Services calling me?
Right.
I couldn't think of any other reason. And during that conversation, they said, well, I'd like to meet with you. Sung Kwang, Dr. Sung Kwang, he works at Andrews University now. He said that he wanted to meet with me. And I said, well, I'm in Israel right now, but when I get back, we can certainly get together. And it was when I came back to the States and met with them that I finally understood that they were interested in having me join Adventist Community Services. And so that was a little over 5 years ago. And
wow.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at how God, so he had you, see, how can I say this so it doesn't come across wrong? He had you training, on the job training on their dime.
Isn't that strange? Isn't that strange?
And
Isn't that
then
strange?
brought you into
right.
this other position, already knowing how to coordinate that whole thing.
How about that? Yeah, it's an incredible thing, and I look at it now, and I say to myself, wow, that had to be God, because I couldn't have planned that, you know?
Yes.
People
Oh,
ask me all the
yes.
time, hey, how do I get into, you know, what you do?
Yeah.
And I say to them, connect up with God,
There you
because
go.
this could not have been something that I planned. You know, I'm not that good. You know, I'll be honest with you. And the fact that he went through working with me in the various places that he has been really an incredible thing. And I've just considered it a blessing to have been along on the ride.
Oh, it's so wonderful. So tell us what the Adventist Community Services Department does. What do you do? Where do you do it?
All right.
Give us a
That's a
synopsis.
deep question that you're asking me. It's interesting because that answer will change depending on where you're asking me the question.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So, for instance, I'll be in New York City tomorrow. Well, Adventist Community Services in New York City is a little different than it is in other parts of the North American division. And rightly so. They have different needs in New York City.
Right.
They have different resources in New York City. So the way Adventist Community Services is in New York City is going to be a little different than I would answer that question in West Virginia or Montana, etc.
Yes.
Do you understand my point?
Yes, I
So what
do.
we try to do is encourage our volunteers, our local teams, to become a part of the community so that they'll be connected with the community and know what the community needs. You know?
I love that. So it's not cookie cutter.
Can't be.
It is.
Can't be.
It's differential. It's selective to
That's right.
each situation.
That's right. That's right.
And that makes sense. I mean, every community is different.
It is, and it would really be somewhat arrogant of us, I think, for us to come in with a cookie cutter program for an area saying, oh, we know what you need.
Exactly.
Take this. That would not make sense and would not be beneficial to the community. Everything we do is locally based. That's how it works. That's how it works. And so when you ask me, what is Adventist Community Services? I say to you, it depends on where we are.
Wow. And we have a couple of videos, I think, that you've supplied. So let's take a look at that, because we need to just kind of see what you're talking about.
Sure, sure. All right, we're here in Amory, Mississippi, and you can see People are coming through for help. These are people that live in the affected community that got struck by the recent tornado. And you can see we've got various supplies, everything's from water to cleanup kits to hygiene items to Pampers for some of the children. Yeah, so that's the type of help that we are able to give as individuals try to recover from this most recent series of tornadoes that came through a little over a week ago here in Amory. Keep them in your prayers.
Hello, so this is our micro shelter project in the backyard of Adventist Community Services here in Tillamook, and it has been it's been occupied for about 2.5 years now. It is managed by CARE. Case managers take care of the individuals that stay in each one of the shelters. The shelters can take 2 people. There's 2 bunks, a heater, a light, a refrigerator, microwave. They use our bathhouse 24/7, and there's not really any room to expand with the number of people that we have using our small bathhouse. So we have dreams of expanding with a dedicated bathhouse for the micro shelter projects, and use this piece of property along the tree line to have at least a few family-sized micro shelters that can house more people. There's lots of things we can innovate. We could have RVs in there. It's a huge need in Tillamook County and a lot of other places, I'm sure, where the RVs don't quite meet the criteria of the parks that people are trying to get into. But the micro shelters have been such a positive program. There have been approximately 34 people move through this shelter project in 2.5 years. And it's just an amazing experience. It's just amazing to be a part of it.
Wow, what amazing work you're doing around the world, which is such a blessing. Tell us about the volunteers. What does it take to be a volunteer?
Well, that's who you saw on those videos.
Okay.
Those are volunteers.
Okay.
And volunteers are people in the community that go to our churches and decide they want to be a resource to the communities where they are. And that's what you saw there. Those are 2 very different teams because they got different needs.
Right.
So for instance, the first video that you saw, that's in Mississippi. Yeah, that sits right there in Tornado Alley. So what's the one thing that they've got in that area that they're going to need on a regular basis? Disaster response. After tornadoes, after storms, because they get hit so often. And based on that, our local South Central team, led by Lily Buckingham and Barbara Barnes, are ready so that when something happens at 2:30 in the morning, like took place there in Armory, Mississippi, they're able to get those forces together and get them on site and delivering those products that you see to the people that have just gotten affected by 11 o'clock hour Sabbath morning. Because that took place Sabbath morning.
Wow.
2:30 in the morning. Sabbath morning, that took place. By 11 o'clock hour, instead of being in a church, and there's nothing wrong with that,
Right.
but they were involved in real service.
Yes.
Right there in the community, right there.
That's
in Armory.
beautiful. Meeting the needs of the people. That's what Jesus did.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
what he did.
Amen.
He met the needs of the people.
No question. And the second video that you saw with Donna there in Oregon, well, one of the issues that they have is homelessness. It's devastating communities there. I tell her, we're not always familiar with the level of homelessness that they're dealing with out there on the West Coast. I was traveling out there, headed to a meeting or something like that, and I had gotten off an exit. And when I got off the exit, I saw what I thought was a festival that was taking place. And so I said, oh, I'm going to have to come back after I check in. So I go to the hotel, check in. As I go back out to check what I thought was a festival out, come to find out it wasn't a festival. It was homeless people that were set up along the ramp of the exit that I had gotten off. That wasn't a festival.
Right.
Those were homeless people that were living there. That's the level that they're dealing with. That's what they saw in Oregon there. And they said, we've got to be able to do something about it. And Donna got with her folk, and they started coming up with a plan. That's how those little homes came to be.
Wow.
Local volunteers getting involved in the community because they know the community. They're there, they live, they work, they worship in those communities. They're a part of the communities. And when they figure out how to become a resource, they do so through partnerships. She's not doing that alone. They do so through getting the church involved in the activity. Oh, it's just it's an opportunity that we have to represent Christ right where we are.
Absolutely. Okay, let's say I'm interested in getting involved.
Yes.
What do I do?
What you do is you go to your church and you talk with your church leadership about forming either one, joining the ACS team that's there, or if it's not one there, start one. Adventist Community Services is officially a ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We are in the manual. Therefore, bring it up to your church leadership. You can start in Adventist Community Services, which gets you connected to the North American Division, Adventist Community Services.
Wonderful.
That's how you can get involved.
Wonderful. And we have your address. We need to put up your address so that people will know just how to reach you.
Yes, please,
Because
reach out.
They're going to want to.
They're
going to want to. Let's take a look at that.
Adventist Community Services, 9705 Patuxent Woods Drive, Columbia, Maryland, 21046. You can reach us via the phone, 443-391-7254, or AdventistCommunityServices.org. That's AdventistCommunityServices.org. Please reach out. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Do you have a closing thought, like a 30-second closing thought for our audience?
Well, I guess the only thing I would want to reinforce is the opportunity for you to get involved in your community is there. Please connect up with your local Seventh-day Adventist church. That's the best way to get yourself engaged and involved in your local community. So please take advantage of it. We've got over 6,000 churches around the North American Division.
Wow.
You can find one near you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Brother Derek, for being with us. What a blessing you've been. It's amazing to me how God has a plan for each of us. I look at how and where he's taken you, and I want you to know that God has a plan for you. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." There's a plan for you. I can't believe our time is up. Thanks for being with us. Join us next time, because you know what? It just wouldn't be the same without you.